Welcome my fellow gamers, I'm the Body Counter, and for today's video I'll be doing another World War I history video and its relation to Battlefield 1. For this video I'll be sharing another faction, one that hasn't been included but deserves a place in the game. The country and its military I'm referring to is the one central power nation we haven't seen yet, the Prussia of the Balkans, Bulgaria. As with my previous history video, please take pity on my pronunciation if I get anything wrong. I try my absolute best to make sure I do my research and get all the words and names absolutely right. Before World War I, Bulgaria became independent from the Ottoman Empire in 1908, and during the First Balkan War, fought against the Ottoman Empire alongside Serbia, Greece, and Montenegro. Bulgaria, with its allies, formed the Balkan League, an alliance formed by these four countries against their common enemy, and they were victorious. Though after the war, Bulgaria was displeased with the division of territory. Greece and Serbia gained territory in Macedonia. So then, Bulgaria declared war on its former allies, starting the Second Balkan War. The war lasted a bit over a month and Bulgaria was defeated. The kingdom essentially lost all of its territory gains from the First Balkan War. When World War I began, Bulgaria declared neutrality first thing, as it was still exhausted post-Balkan Wars. But although it was quick to stand neutral, many within Bulgaria sought joining the conflict as the best opportunity to regain its lost land. It wasn't until September 6, 1915 that Bulgaria and Germany formed an alliance in secrecy, and later announced their alliance publicly to the people on the 14th of October. Bulgaria's battles through 1915 were largely successful. Their first sites of action were during the Serbian campaign, while Germany and Austria-Hungary crushed the Serbians in Belgrade. The Bulgarian armies fought during the Battle of Morava and the Battle of 1's. The Bulgarians' breakthrough caused the Serbians to retreat. Bulgaria, Austria-Hungary, and Germany would surround the Serbs that attempted to link up with any remaining forces. What followed was the mass retreat of both military and civilian Serbians through Montenegro into the Albanian mountains. Around 200,000 Serbians died on the retreat. The harsh environment, disease, and hunger took their toll on the fleeing men and women. Around 150,000 made it to the Adriatic Sea, and with the assistance of the Allies, the newly arrived Serbs were evacuated to the neutral Greek island of Corfu, where they would later be transferred to Salonika to continue fighting against the Central Powers. During the course of the war, Bulgaria would fight on the Macedonian front with their allies, the German, Austro-Hungarian, and Ottoman empires against the Serbians, the British, French, and the Russian expeditionary forces, and later in 1916, Italy and Romania would join the Allied powers on the front, and finally Greece in 1917. Only after a sizable amount of land was claimed by the Central Powers in the Serbian campaign in 1915 was Bulgaria linked to Austria-Hungary, allowing for more efficient transport of soldiers and equipment from Berlin through the Balkans all the way to Constantinople, such as German arms and workers to the Ottomans, or Austrian and German weaponry and men to Bulgaria. In 1915, Bulgaria was on a winning streak from October to December. The Morava, 1's, and Kosovo offensives led to the Central Powers' occupation of Serbia once again. In 1916, Bulgaria was still quite a powerful combatant against their enemies, and during this year, British and French forces began making a proper appearance in the region. Not only that, but Romania would join the Entente powers during this year, leaving itself extremely vulnerable to attack from Austria-Hungary from the north and now Bulgaria in the south, with only Russia in the east able to provide the Romanians extra support. The Battle of Florina, which took place from the 17th to the 28th of August, was a costly fight for the Bulgarian troops, but resulted in the capture of the present-day Greek city of Florina, resulting in almost 4,000 casualties for the Serbs defending the city. However, the Bulgarians were unable to proceed any further into the territory. The First Battle of Doriran in August 1916 would also be a key victory for Bulgaria during this year. With only one division and vastly outnumbered, the Bulgarians defeated the French and British at Lake Dodron. Later in the year, a French general would begin planning the Monastir offensive, a counter-offensive aimed at crippling the Bulgarian lines. From September 1916 to December 1916, the Allies suffered heavier losses than Bulgaria and Germany during the offensive, and gained little ground as they intended, but was still a victory nonetheless for the Allies. 120 to 130,000 Allies were killed, wounded or captured in the operation, while casualty numbers for Bulgaria and Germany were an estimated 60,000. And this is only on the Macedonian front. Now, we'll discuss the Romanian front. Romania ended up declaring war on the Austro-Hungarian Empire on the 27th of August of 1916 and began crippling the Austro-Hungarian army in Transylvania. Once Romania entered the war, Germany and Bulgaria declared war on the small nation. The campaign against the Romanians was to be a quick one. Romania may have had Russia at its borders, but the country itself was encircled by the Central Powers. The first attack on the front was the Battle of Târgu. From the 2nd to the 6th of September, Bulgaria and Germany launched an attack which was aimed in capturing Târgu fortress. At times, the Bulgarians had many delays from the defenders' artillery, but the Romanians had issues themselves, such as new troops arriving inconsistently. But the Bulgarians managed to breach the fortresses in the area while in danger of their own artillery. This was the first Bulgarian victory on the Romanian front, and not the last. The next battle to follow would happen on the 17th of September and would last for 2 days. The first Battle of Kobardin was a victory for the Romanians thanks to their navy's river monitors, which hammered Bulgarian, German and Ottoman forces from within their designated rivers. Immediately preceding the first Battle of Kobardin was the second battle, though this time, this fight would result in a big victory for the Central Powers. The Central Powers took over the port of Constanța on the coast of the Black Sea and a railway connecting 2 cities from the Romanians and Russians. It wasn't until the Flamanda offensive on the 29th of September, while the Monastir offensive was raging on the Macedonian front, did Romania finally start succumbing to the might of the Central Powers. This offensive was fought on the border of Romania and Bulgaria. This battle had a large focus on naval combat. Many ships fought in this battle. Romanian artillery crippled many of the Austro-Hungarian ships, but the general leading the Romanians during this battle cancelled the offensive 5 days after it began. One of the major battles which cost the Romanians was the Battle of Bucharest, the capital of Romania. The battle started on the 27th of November and ended on December 6th. That same month, the Romanian campaign would be won by the Central Powers, knocking yet again another Entente power out of the war. It was in 1917 that Bulgaria's armies began to experience major food shortages and lack of supplies. With these factors negatively affecting the Bulgarian troops, the men of the armies had low morale on the front, and desertions were more commonplace than at the beginning of the war, though this didn't stop those who remained to fight and stay loyal to their kingdom. During 1917, plans for an Allied spring offensive were made to break the stable Bulgarian line. One of the unfortunate realizations for the Allies after the capture of Monastir in 1916 was that the city was vulnerable to Bulgarian attack, primarily by artillery, but the French commander at the time was determined to break the Bulgarian front lines during the spring offensive. During March of 1917, the French planned to attack Bulgarian positions north and west of the city, starting the Second Battle of Monastir. The French had minor gains, but quickly lost that ground to the Central Powers. The victory itself for the Bulgarians was what they wanted. The soldiers and generals rejoiced in this magnificent outcome. In April 1917, the Second Battle of Doriran began, and just like the first battle, was won by the Bulgarians yet again. This time, the French did not assist the British during the battle. Using heavy artillery and effective counter-attack methods, the Bulgarians won the fight, costing the British 12,000 casualties and the Bulgarians with only 2,000 casualties. In May, the Second Battle of Surnabend commenced, between both Bulgaria, with German support, and the Allies, France, Italy, and the deteriorating Russian Empire forces. Much like the previous offensives, Bulgaria was yet again outnumbered, but not outmatched. In 5 days, the Central Powers repulsed the attackers and dealt quick and decisive counterattacks to push the Allies back. The spring offensive was a failure for the Allies, meaning the entire operation was meaningless in breaking the Bulgarians' front lines. It wasn't until 1918 where Bulgaria's victory streak would begin to end. The Battle of Skra-de-Legen in May would be one of the first defeats in 1918. Greek and French soldiers would fight Bulgarian forces northwest of Thessalonica. Greek guns fired upon the Bulgarians in the morning, and the next day, the Allies would push an attack on the outmanned Bulgarian defenders. The fateful defeat of the Bulgarians was during the Vardar offensive, the final Allied offensive on the Balkan front, which would ultimately cause Bulgaria to sign an armistice with the Allies. The Vardar offensive was fought from the 15th to the 29th of September of 1918. Both Bulgaria and Germany fought during this devastating battle, but a key factor contributing to the Allies' success in the campaign was the sheer number of Entente forces involved. Serbian, British, Greek, Italian, and French all fought together to bring down the Bulgarians. The Allies first struck Dobropol. Using artillery and a quick assault following the barrage caused many Bulgarian soldiers to desert the fight. Vastly outnumbered, the Bulgarians were eventually surrounded and forced to withdraw from the area. Though the Allies would eventually win the battle, many Bulgarian units who had survived the previous artillery were able to slow down the movement of Allied forces to Saborsko. However, Bulgarian troops during the Third Battle of Duiran, which was fought during the Vardar offensive, were able to beat the Allies due to many conflicting errors the Entente powers experienced during the battle. The victory was short-lived, as the forces stationed at Duiran were ordered to fall back as Dobropol had been lost. The Bulgarians went into full retreat from their enemies, and while the war was at this point lost by the Bulgarians on the front, back home, a rebellion was brewing. Though short-lived, it was a prime reason for Bulgaria wanting to seek peace with the Allies, as many rebels were men of the Bulgarian army who had deserted. Many sought the leader of Bulgaria, Tsar Ferdinand, who they claimed was responsible for the war and to blame for Bulgaria's hardships. It wasn't until the 29th of September that the Bulgarian government would sign an armistice with the Allies, ending the Balkan campaign. For the smaller Central Powers nation during the war, and the last to join the Central Powers, they stood strong, held their chins high against overwhelming manpower, technology, and lack of supplies. I would have been so glad to see Bulgaria as a nation in Battlefield 1. I definitely prefer the Czech Legion to have been featured in the Russian DLC, but Bulgaria's addition to either Apocalypse or maybe in a future community operation expansion would be the next best thing. I admire the Bulgarians' efforts in the war, and seeing DICE represent them as strong-willed fighters would have been a great sight to see. The battles that could be featured as maps for the Bulgarians is as follows. Number 1, the Second Battle of Monastir, Bulgaria vs France, 1917. Having won the First Battle of Monastir in 1916, the French were determined to continue onwards and claim more ground and puncture the Bulgarian defensive lines. Unfortunately for the French, the Bulgarians had a stable stance and soon would retake much of the ground that was gained by the French in 1916. As a map, or maps, one would be centred around large-scale open valleys and hills north of the city of Monastir, but for extra cover for the map between both the faction bases, remains of the 1916 Monastir battle should remain, such as deteriorating trenches and dug-ins. Planes and cavalry would certainly make an appearance on this map, but no tanks. Armoured cars would be acceptable, as well as a new vehicle I had in mind, the Krupp Schulman 57mm mobile cannon. A 2-horse-driven mobile turret fit for one person, providing safe and accurate fire from a distance. This mobile cannon is the closest thing to a tank for this Bulgarian DLC. If both horses are killed, the turret will become immobile, but will still remain functional until the turret is actually destroyed. Many small shrubs and trees would flourish in many places, as much of the terrain wasn't as damaged as it was on the western front. For the second map I have in mind for the Second Battle of Monastir, it remains historically inaccurate, but it's a suitable location for the Bulgarians to be attacking. This map is to be located on the outskirts and within the city of Monastir. Monastir was victim to incendiary bombardments during the battle, and so many buildings in surrounding areas could be illuminated by fire and burning buildings, creating a hellish cityscape. The streets of Monastir would be long, with few side streets diverting into different directions. A possible detail to be added is the ability to see Monastir from the previously mentioned map from a distance. I would like to see the city as an infantry-only map, no armoured cars or bikes. These two maps will be linked by an operation, which I'll mention later on. Number 2. The First Battle of Duiran, Bulgaria vs Britain, 1916. Occurring near Lake Dodron, British and French expeditionary forces fought the Bulgarians on the southern shore of the lake. This was the first time these forces were to fight, and the Bulgarians would win all 3 battles. Terrain would be extreme, low and flat closest to the shoreline, but it would immediately begin to transform into mountainous slopes the further you go from the water. An idea that would be more acceptable than adding Y-lighters and torpedo boats in a closed-off lake would be to add small rowboats capable of fitting 3 men, one of which is a permanent gunner, and the other 2 can switch between rowing and shooting by pressing the switch weapons button. If both people are rowing, it will obviously make the boat travel faster. It would be fitting that on either side of the map, each base gets several sets of these easy-to-destroy rowboats to use in their aquatic travels. All flags will be on the land, but one flag should remain close to the shoreline so that rowboats can capture it. Rowboats cannot be repaired and can be damaged by standard weapons, but upon depleting the boat's health, it does not kill the entire crew. It only ejects them from the now destroyed craft, unless one uses explosives to destroy it. Number 3. The Second Battle of Surnar Bend, Bulgaria vs France, 1917. A battle which took place on the bend of the Surnar River. Not only did the French fight during this battle, but also Russian and Italian expeditionary forces. A particular site of the battle worth featuring as a map would be Hill 1050, as the location was not just plains and hills, but also had destroyed stone buildings and old trenches surrounding the location, making it ideal for several flag locations with adequate cover, much like the town in Soissons, to give the map a more diverse look than being just a sniper heaven for all. Bulgarian lines will be very well fortified compared to French lines, and much of the Bulgarian high ground would make a good advantage to whoever claims the flags on the highest hills. Planes and armoured vehicles, plus a new Krupp Schulman cannon, would be great to see on this map. And number 4, the Vardar Offensive, Bulgaria vs France and Britain, 1918. The final campaign on the Balkan front, and I have 2 suggestions for Vardar Offensive maps, one being set during the Battle of Dobropol, and one during the Third Battle of Doiran. Dobropol was a decisive blow that crippled the Bulgarian line and led to the withdrawal of Central Powers located at Doiran. The Vardar offensive as a whole was fought by 5 different allied nations. Dobropol was largely a vibrant flora-present location, with shrubs completely covering the ground from ankle to waist high, and few large trees throughout the land. Many trees would also be losing their leaves, as it is autumn during the offensive. Key aesthetic features for this map is to have the Bulgarian lines and areas around said trenches severely damaged from the Allies' artillery, and many Bulgarian and German bunkers overlooking the Allied base shattered from the shells. As for the Third Battle of Doiran map, I can imagine some similarities with the First Battle of Doiran map I suggested before, except this time it will be set in a different sector of the Bulgarian defensive line, further away from the lake itself. This sector should have more fortified Bulgarian bunkers and trenches than the first battle, as it has been 2 years since the first battle commenced, and the defences should only be improving over time. Planes, armoured cars, and the Krupp Schulman 57mm cannon should be present on both these maps. As these maps are to be linked as an operation, the Battle of Dobropol is to be fought by the French and Doiran by the British against the Bulgarians, being the first operation in Battlefield 1 to have a faction change between maps. The list is quite in depth for battles in which Bulgaria fought in, but as for operations that Bulgarians could feature in, I have 2 ideas. Number 1, Unity Makes Strength. A mighty operation focusing on Bulgaria's counter-offensive of Monastir in 1917 against the French. Focusing on the combat against the French defenders and the reoccupation of the city of Monastir, the attackers must fight their way south into French lines in order to reclaim the city they fought so hard to defend in the previous year. Number 2, Vardar. Set around Bulgaria's final days in the war against the Allies, this operation sees Bulgaria as the defenders, unlike the previously mentioned operation. This campaign focuses on the Battle of Dobropol and the Third Battle of Doiran, as Bulgaria makes a desperate last stand against the massive Allied forces, holding whatever ground that can keep their flag standing in foreign soil. Finding large amounts of information on Bulgaria during the Great War was tough, so the many things I researched were scarce on details, and pictures of Bulgarians were not as plentiful as photos of Germans or French on the Western Front. Bulgarian uniforms were brown in colour, infantry caps bearing a red band and the Bulgarian cockade above the visor. Tunic uniforms had red shoulder boards, black sleeve cuffs, yellow buttons, and black collars with red outlines. Footwear were primarily long black boots, or pointed mountaineer-like shoes, which also helped keep up the thick white socks to the wearer's knees. Later during the war, Germans sold thousands of Stahlhelms to Bulgaria for their soldiers to use on the front, primarily shock troopers, who would see the most intense combat in enemy trenches or rushing into no man's land during the night on hilly terrain. As for weaponry used by the Bulgarians, many are already in-game and were used by the German or Austro-Hungarian Empire. Mannlicher 95s and 88s, Frommer Stops, P08s, C96s and MG08s, Madsen LMGs and many more. Of the 4.6 million Bulgarians in 1915, around 1.2 million Bulgarians served in the war at some point, and only 100,000 were killed in action, a drastically low number considering how many actually served. The mighty men of Bulgaria fought with great strength and pride, for their fatherland and flag, Crushing two nations and surviving battles they were vastly outnumbered and unequipped in, the men of Bulgaria deserve more recognition for their efforts in the war. I hope you enjoyed this new history discussion video, and I hope you can take something new out of it. Leave a like if you found this video entertaining or educational, leave a comment if you have any questions, subscribe to keep up to date for when I upload next, and as always, continue gaming on.